In all the time I've been making videos for this channel, you know what I've almost never done? Redo a past video. They suck, but I have no interest in trying to redo or recreate them. Just let them stand as examples for what I or any other video maker should not do. Fast forward to when I have an active Patreon campaign, and at some point I said, hey guys, if we hit this really out of reach goal, I'll redo those terrible Shenmue videos that I made ages ago. I underestimated my patrons. We can't properly delve into Shenmue without first getting into the guy behind Shenmue. A guy without whom Sega might not have been what it was in the 80s and 90s, and Sony might not have been inspired to do what it did with the PlayStation. That man is Yu fucking Suzuki. That's not his middle name, by the way. Yu was developing games before I was born, and just after Sega's first home console, the SG-1000, was created. In short order, he developed Champion Boxing for the system, and apparently Sega's higher-ups were so enamored with his work that he was promoted to project leader in his first year with the company. From there, he went on a run of working on Sega arcade classics. Hang-On, Space Harrier, Outrun, Afterburner, Power Drift. It's important to note that Yu wasn't just designing these games. He took on the roles of designer, programmer, engineer, and producer at various times. He sometimes helped with not just developing the game itself, but the arcade cabinet it ran in. Aside from the motorcycle and seat for Hang-On, he also worked on the moving seat for the Space Harrier cabinet. For his games though, he needed the right boards to run them. And given his ambitious nature, Suzuki usually had to put in requests for newer, more powerful boards to make them work. This also happened in the midst of an arms race of sorts with Namco for arcade tech. But working within and pushing the constraints of current technology is something that Suzuki would become known for throughout this stage of his career, and his ambition paid off, for him and for Sega. In the midst of this, Sega began separating its amusement-based workforce into different divisions with different focuses, and they created Amusement Machine Research and Development Group No. 2, better known as Sega AM2, under the management of Yu fucking Suzuki. Aside from follow-ups to some prior titles and the somewhat underappreciated Rent-A-Hero, Sega AM2 would spend the 1990s developing and releasing some highly influential games. See, Suzuki had the desire to take his games to another dimension. The third dimension. This was always on his mind, to the point that even his programming for games like Hang-On was done in 3D and then converted back into 2D. Hell, 3D graphics was the subject of his thesis when he graduated from university. His games to this point gave the illusion of 3D, or at least 2.5D, but then came his 3 Vs of 3D. Virtua Racing, Virtua Cop, and Virtua Fighter. Which are nice, but I was more of a fan of another game Suzuki was a producer for around this time. Parallels between these 3 games and later influential titles from other developers are numerous. Virtua Fighter and Tekken, Virtua Cop and GoldenEye, Virtua Racing and, well, 3D racing games as a whole pretty much. While games like these, particularly Virtua Racing, were boosting Sega's arcade and coin-op revenue, the Mega Drive/Genesis was, in the eyes of Sega's higher-ups, getting long in the tooth, and it was nearly time to transition to Sega's next home console. And this is going to sound really weird, but Chucky just came out of the crawl space of our home, and she pulled out a VHS tape. I mean, there's no label on it, but there was a note taped to it, and it said that it's some sort of archived footage from various meetings and television show appearances involving people from Sega, and I thought it would be worth taking a look at, so here's what I ripped from it.
Hello everyone, sorry for calling you in on such short notice, but this is important. I just got a call from Tom, and it sounds like Sega of Japan is finally ready to launch their brand new 3D gaming platform, the Sega Saturn, overseas here next year, and we need to be ready for launch. Which is great! We're excited to hear this. But if I were to be candid for a moment, Tom and I are very unsure about this whole thing. For one, there's no rush to get new hardware out right now. The Genesis is still selling gangbusters, not to mention the millions of Genesis stock we still have to liquidate from our inventory. And there's not that much Saturn software right now, let alone time to localize it. But regarding the hardware itself, okay, well, this stays between you and I, but Sega was originally working on a 2D console because none of their game development staff are familiar with 3D game development. But when they caught wind that Sony was working on their own 3D capable machine, because Sega rejected a proposal to collaborate with them on the hardware, they panicked and they added in a new processor to Frankenstein the console into something that could barely run 3D code. And it ain't pretty. In fact, Tom is so worried about the whole thing that he tried to strike a deal with the Silicon Graphics people to have them develop the hardware instead. But Sega Japan said no, so they're stuck trying to sell this $400 hunk of junk. But they did listen to our proposal to try to keep the Genesis alive, and we are developing a new piece of hardware that we think might have more of a fighting chance. Now, as I understand it, with the Sega Saturn launching in September, you wanted to remind consumers about the Sega 32X add-on that launched last November? Well, as I've stated here before, we here at Sega have been committed to our goal of delivering arcade-quality titles to the living room, and the best way to achieve that is with the Sega Saturn. But we've also heard feedback from parents who already own a Genesis and are concerned with the rising cost of upgrading gaming machines. As a response, we created the 32X as a more affordable option for playing a new selection of 3D titles. Yeah, but aren't a lot of those games already available in the Sega Genesis? Well, alongside our enhanced selection of titles also available in the Sega Genesis, we have a slew of titles exclusive to the 32X like Doom and one of my personal favorites, Virtual Racing Deluxe. In fact, we have over 40 games in active development from our many development partners. Oh, ain't that great. But wait, we got a clip coming in from Sega's ongoing conference at E3. Uh-oh.
We started our rollout of Sega Saturn yesterday. We're at retail today. Sega Saturn is not only here now, it's out there. Thanks. So an honor.
Well, it looks like the Sega Saturn is available right now. Boy, if I was one of those game developers, I would not want to develop for the 32X anytime soon. Alright everybody, the sales figures are in, and the 32X has been deemed a failure in both America and Japan. So corporate is telling us that we need to focus all of our future efforts exclusively on the Saturn. And right now, the only game we have available for after launch is Bug. So things aren't looking too great for us, are they? And that little stunt that we pulled with the retailers has really pissed them off, and the Sega Saturn still isn't widely available across the country. And with Nintendo's Ultra 64 coming out in November, we need a killer app to rival it right now. And AM2's Virtual Fighter RPG won't be ready in time, and Panzer Dragoons Y isn't enough. Thankfully, for our sakes, the fine folks at Sega Technical Institute have been working hard to ensure that Sonic Extreme will be ready for launch in November, to give us a chance to rival our mustachioed menace. So that should give us a few months to... Wait 1 second. Service games. Uh-huh. Understood. So we have no Sonic game for November. So that just leaves us with Sonic Team's game about a manic pixie fairy for little girls instead of a badass dude with an attitude. Fuck it. Just take Traveler's Tales isometric Sonic game and put some FMVs in it and ship it. Listen, I don't know how to get this through to you guys anymore, but the Saturn is over. Okay, no one is buying the Saturn anymore. We tried to use SegaNet to give the console a new lifespan, but no one bought into it. Look, I knew things were bad when Tom Colinski said that he was stepping down, but this Bernard Stoller guy saying that the Saturn is not our future has completely ruined everything. All of the major titles that we had lined up for the Saturn have been moved over to the Dreamcast, and we can't market any of the ones that we have left since you slashed our promotional budgets. So what are Sega fans supposed to play for the next 2 years as the hardware gets ready? Nothing? Although you guys seem to be really obsessed with that Virtua Fighter RPG game since you changed its name and gave it a $50 million budget boost. Money that we don't have anyway. You know what? I'm done putting up with this company. I'm moving over to a certain Epic gaming company.
You're fired!
I know!
Wait. So this whole time, my uncle really did work at Sega? As the Ivory Tower Clown Show was playing out, Yu Suzuki was working on yet another incredibly ambitious project. He wanted to make a game that was less about the quick play and time-barred nature of arcade titles. He got into role-playing games from the late 80s, and the initial fruits of his labor came in the form of The Old Man and the Peach Tree, a prototype for the Sega Saturn. This was his way of testing several types of systems within one game, namely the 4 C's: camera, conversations, controls, and combat. The prototype became the basis for what would have been a 3D Virtua Fighter-based RPG starring Akira Yuki, one that was more cinematic and had voice acting for everyone. Then Yu went on a trip to China to scout locations and learn about various martial arts, and he completely reworked the story. It had more dads getting murdered and revenge, and he and a writing team expanded it to 11 chapters. He basically had a novel he was building a game from. Suzuki still has the Legend of Akira books, which were the basis for this, both the original script and the novelization. So, if nothing else, I at least admire his commitment to a still unfinished project. Wait, does that count as a spoiler? The game switched from being designed for the Saturn to being designed for the Dreamcast, a console which Suzuki's team didn't have the specs for and was more or less guessing what it could handle. That guesswork also played into the game's scope, as at one point it was slated to take up anywhere from 50 to 60 discs in its raw form. On top of finding new ways to compress the data, Suzuki also had incredibly lofty goals for his open-world game and made some seemingly bizarre development choices to make it happen. According to some reports, he assembled a team of writers, directors, playwrights, and screenwriters, and played them an orchestral suite with multiple movements that he composed himself before they helped shape the script. He brought in interior decorators and architects to design the buildings inside and out. Weather reports from the game's rough time and location were used to generate weather patterns and day-night cycles for the environment. In the midst of this, the Virtua Fighter connection was dropped and they finally landed on the name Shenmue, which Sega's chief operating officer Bernie Stoller decided to pimp to the masses by saying, quote, "I can't tell you what Suzuki-san is working on. Let's just say that I've seen the project and it's going to rock the gaming world." Including and especially in ways no one intended. Don't worry, we'll get to that later. After putting, and this isn't an exaggeration, hundreds of characters and their daily routines into the game and product placement in the form of a Timex watch and Coca-Cola cans, bug testing went into overdrive, reporting hundreds of bugs in a single day and at one point totaling 10,000 bugs the QA team found. That was on top of having to move the positions of the in-game vending machines because Coca-Cola was acting pissy about how they were placed. Outside of Japan, the Coca-Cola branding was dropped. With the Dreamcast releasing in Japan in 1998, a demo CD was included with copies of Virtua Fighter 3TB, one which showed FMV cutscenes from Shenmue but no gameplay. Shenmue's initial launch date of April 1999 got pushed back to August, and it was also announced at the Tokyo Game Show that Shenmue, despite not having a single game released yet, would be a multi-game series. And if you know me well, you know how much I love when developers commit to making a series before the first game even releases. Love it. Can't get enough of it. In fact, you see that Tony Hawk ride board in the background? That is a symbol for how much I love when developers do that. Amidst more appearances to hype up the game, Shenmue got delayed another 2 times to the end of 1999 in Japan, and almost a year later in North America and Europe. Somehow, Suzuki and company crammed everything they were planning in not 50 discs or 40 discs, but 3 discs. And since this is a 3-disc game, we're probably going to be here for a while, so why don't we... There are 4 discs. On top of the 3 discs for the game, it also comes with something called Shenmue Passport. And yes, it has its own separate instruction booklet, one which recommends visiting Shenmue.com, a site which stayed up until mid-2014, around when Sega renewed the Shenmue trademark. There are 4 features here: The first two are a movie gallery and a music player, which have more options available as you progress through the game because all of this is tied to your save data. The former includes trailers and previews, one of which is edited like a YouTube poop and makes the game look way more exciting than it actually is. The third feature is just called Information, and it has videos of various characters explaining various story beats or game mechanics. Minor spoiler, some of these characters are barely in the game or don't appear in it at all.
Remember that for later.
Even by modern standards, some of these character models look really good. The animation's a bit weird at times, like how sometimes the eyes follow the camera and sometimes they just stare into the void, or how you can see people's teeth sliding back and forth. Why did they zoom in like this and make that more obvious? But still, they look good overall. Until you get to the less important characters like Mark. I didn't need to see any of these characters' faces from a few inches away, but I definitely didn't need to see this one. Or this one for that matter. The main event of this disc is the Passport. By using a dial-up modem to connect the console to the internet, you could do stuff like check online rankings for various minigames, trade in-game trinkets with other players, check the absurdly detailed stats about your current game data, or look up absurdly detailed information on places, fighting techniques, or pretty much anything in this game that breathes. Look, I'm all for world building and backstories, but why would anyone ever need to know the full name, blood type, birthday, and zodiac sign of a random townsperson who has no part in the story? Or a random goon who shows up once and gets his skull caved in by Rio? Or one of the several cats that appears in the game? You could also get hints if you didn't know what to do next in the game, or use the Dreamcast browser to visit Shenmue.com.
The parent-approved way to use the only phone line in your house.
The Passport part of Shenmue Passport went down in 2002, a few months after Japan got Shenmue 2 and a few months after the rest of the world saw it. Now the Passport disc is little more than a music and cutscene collection. The fan site Shenmue Dojo does have several screenshots of what the service looked like, and there's also Suka Pass, a fan-made recreation of it for mobile devices, though obviously several things related to save data aren't quite fully functional. Again, I'm impressed by the amount of detail put into every tiny little element, but that also feels like a lot of misplaced effort. 99% of this background info isn't just unnecessary, it's something I never once had even a fleeting thought about.
Maybe Suzuki did this so fanfic writers couldn't headcanon their ideas onto his characters? I don't know, but either way, because the most prominent feature for it doesn't work anymore, I only used Shenmue Passport 2 times. Once before I started playing, and then again after I finished the game. Although, as you'll see later, finished is kind of a relative term.
The game opens with a dramatic bird and a Chinese girl monologuing about some guy from overseas on some path, and maybe he'll be a hero, or maybe not. She does this while standing both on a cliff and way too close to the microphone.
The path he must traverse, fraught with adversity. I await whilst praying.
She then proceeds to disappear for almost the entire game, only appearing in a couple of dream sequences and on a couple of background objects as Easter eggs. Hell, if I didn't use Shenmue Passport earlier, I wouldn't have even known her name. Which escapes me for the moment.
We start in November of 1996 in Yokosuka, which is a very real place in Japan, even if most of the others in this game aren't. 18-year-old Ryo Hazuki rushes home to find the front gate open, the sign outside his home snapped in half, and a car parked out front. He finds Ine, the family's housekeeper, who seems to be hurt but is apparently okay, before he moves to the family dojo, where he gets a student thrown at him. He enters to find a Chinese man in a robe squaring off with his dad, who's asking about a mirror.
For the last time, where is the mirror?
I've no intention of telling you.
Papa Hazuki can't lay a finger on him, and when Ryo tries to interject, he eats a one-hit KO and is used as a bargaining chip.
No, don't!
Hand over the mirror.
Can we take a moment to talk about how absurdly strong Landy is? Dude's holding a 143-pound adult a foot and a half off the ground with one hand like he's nothing. And yes, I did look up Ryo's exact weight because of course that info is out there. Ryo's dad caves and tells Landy where the mirror is, at which point Landy proceeds to play with his food.
Do you remember Chao Sun Ming?
Chao?
That's the name of the man you killed in Moon Swan. Get up. I'll allow you to die like a warrior.
And is this a good time to mention that Landy's voice actor also portrayed this guy?
You win!
Look, I have to make at least one Bloody Roar reference per video, alright? It's in the contract that I signed and also wrote for myself. After he Hadokens Ryo's dad to the brink of death, he takes the mirror and leaves.
Keep friends. Those you love close to you. No. Father! No!
Huh. He just died in his arms that night. It must have been something he said. After Ryo's dad dying caused the snowy day to turn into a stormy night, 4 days pass and Ryo is still having nightmares about Landy killing his dad as what sounds like a knockoff of the theme to The Young and the Restless plays. And upon waking up, the game starts. The first thing that happens is Ryo opens his notebook to a set of phone numbers, the first of which is the police. Well, if my dad were murdered, I would call the police, so I did that at the end of the first day, and...
It's no use asking the police for help at this point.
Alright, I know this is a few days after the murder happened, but we never see a funeral. We never see signs of an investigation. We never see police officers asking Ryo or anybody else questions. They did report the murder, right? Because if they didn't, then... There are also a bunch of other numbers in the notebook which I never called once, not even out of curiosity. Being the total hoarder that I am, I spent almost the entire first day at the Hazuki home ransacking every closet, cabinet, fridge, dresser, trunk, shoebox, and desk drawer in every room I walked into. In the process, I found stuff like a couple tapes and tape recorder, which Ryo can use to listen to music, a couple photos, batteries, a cockroach.
It's just a cockroach.
It's never just one cockroach, Ryo. That's just the one that you happen to see instead of the many, many, many others that you didn't. Bottom line, you should probably burn your house down. A book of matches, a couple scrolls for fighting moves to learn, a flashlight, one of many, 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 many Virtua Fighter references in this game, a Sega Saturn. Yes, you can find Saturn games within Shenmue to play on that Saturn in Ryo's home, but they were so annoying to get that I just never bothered. Also, yes, we do have a Sega Saturn in 1986.
You've created a time paradox!
I found all of this while trying to get used to the controls, which... Alright, look. When Ryo is in a large open area, the controls are fine. The moment he has to navigate tighter spaces or focus on a specific object, things can become a
big pain in the ass.
Every time Ryo turns, he also moves forward. He can't move backward, just do a 180-degree turn which swings the camera around. The camera which will regularly end up zoomed in on the back of Ryo's head, and otherwise makes it difficult to see what's on the floor or even just below his waist at times, which led to me repeatedly getting stuck on objects. The focus camera is supposed to help with this, the keywords being supposed to. First off, I don't know why this is on the control stick and movement is on the D-pad. That seems kind of backwards to me, particularly with how floaty focus mode is. It always wants to be at dead center, so the moment you move it and let go of the stick, it drifts back to the default position. That is, unless you hover over something the game deems important, at which point it locks onto the object. There were times I wanted to just look around environments, but focus mode kept locking onto the wrong thing, or stuff I didn't care about, or stuff which served no purpose. And make no mistake, the overwhelming majority of things the game will lock onto and let you interact with are entirely pointless. Many items in close proximity can be moved between with the D-pad, but others can't. It wasn't a constant issue, but it was annoying nonetheless when it happened. Anyway, Ine-san gives Ryo a 500 yen allowance every day. Hold up. This 18-year-old gets a daily allowance of roughly $5? This guy's old enough to graduate from high school and he still has an allowance? A daily allowance? Dude, my parents thought it was a bit much for me to have a $1 a week allowance past the age of 12. He sees some flashbacks while moving around the home, like when his dad teaches him how to throw an elbow strike or guilt trips him into eating carrots. I would have preferred seeing this and or knowing anything about Ryo's dad before he got killed at the start of the game, but better late than never, I guess. Before finding a letter his dad wrote, one which indicates he knew this day was coming, and where he somehow wrote in several second-long pauses and camera cuts that seem like they're trying to focus on everything except Ryo.
Those who follow the path of a warrior must be ready to die. In order to stand by their convictions, live for one's convictions, die for one's convictions. That is how I lived my life. Ryo.
In the dojo, Fukuhara-san is trying to improve his acting.
You're not going after them! Please, don't! Look what they did to Hazuki-sensei!
And there are a couple puzzles to solve involving a sword and a scroll, though the last puzzle can't be solved until later. Upon leaving through the front gate, this is when the most prominent part of the game starts. Wandering around, asking people if they saw, heard, or know anything that might ultimately help Ryo track down Lan Di. There are a couple small town areas right outside Ryo's home in the form of Yamanose, which is mostly one road, and Sakuragaoka, followed by the commercial district of Dobuita. Ryo initiates conversations with people, and then you have to keep pressing A for him to ask a predetermined question or questions. Otherwise, he forgets what he's doing and abruptly ends the dialogue. There's already the ability to skip dialogue, so this just felt unnecessary. Yamanose doesn't have a lot of people around, but the first big clue happens while introducing the only character worth a damn. The cat! There's a kitten whose mother was run over and now she's alone, being kept in a box near the local shrine and tended to by a child who doesn't know how to take care of cats. As for what hit the mother,
My big sister saw it. She said it was a big black car.
A black car?
Yeah, and she said it was really scary.
this kitten can be petted and fed things like milk and dried fish, which Ryo can find or buy from stores, and there's even a chance to name it later on. This kitten was modeled after the cat of Manabu Takimoto, one of the interior designers, and I cared more about this little guy than anyone else in the game, checking on it and feeding it every day until it eventually got healthy enough to leave the box and wander the neighborhood for the rest of the game. If it sounds weird at all that one of the dev team members' pets is in the game, I should mention that many of the dev team members for this game appear in this game somehow. Either their likenesses were used or parts of their names were used. Takimoto himself appears as one of the guys near the construction site in Sakuragaoka. Well, that's enough for one day. When it gets late, Ryo has the option to go home and sleep. I say option, but if it gets too late, the alarm on his Timex Indiglo watch goes off and he does this automatically. The only punishment for this is a very light scolding from Ine-san.
Yes.
Oh, right, younger viewers, watches are things people wore on their wrists back then to know what time it was. It is 1986 after all, cell phones at the time looked like this. The next day I went to Sakuragaoka, which is a much more open space with more types of buildings and areas. As someone who's never been to Japan yet, it does give the vibe of a small semi-urban Japanese town. One with a park, a small store where you can't buy anything, and more people going about their days. In fact, everyone in this game has their own routines that they go through. It's entirely possible that when you don't see them just T-pose into existence, you can find someone and just follow them around from their home to their job to their lunch break to wherever they hang out after work and back home over the course of a day. But that would also be stalking, so maybe don't do that. I went here to ask around more about Ryo's dad's murder, but there were a couple of things that stood out about what Ryo was doing. First, obviously, he's not a detective. Man, if only he had the phone number to a place detectives worked. But he keeps asking questions in incredibly vague terms. Instead of asking about the day his father died, he asks about that day, or the day of the incident, and leaves it to whoever he's talking to fill in the blanks.
On the day of that incident, the day of the incident, the day of the incident, did you see a black car the day of that incident? On the day of the incident, it's about the day of the incident. That day, that day, that day. Did you see any men wearing black suits that day?
Even in the context of this game, if someone walked up to me and asked about the day of the incident, I wouldn't know if they're talking about a fight, or a car accident, or someone getting pantsed in the school cafeteria. The only time he narrows this down is when he sometimes says, the day it snowed.
Did you see a black car around here that day when it snowed? The day it snowed, that day it snowed.
Ryo, not only did it also rain the same day, somehow, but if it snowed at all before or since then, this isn't helping either. Second, Shenmue clearly has a sequence of events it wants to happen in a certain order. A sequence which leaves plenty of room for Ryo to look like a goddamn idiot. At this point, I've barely started the game, but Ryo already got a clue about the big black car that hit the kitten's mother. It's possible to botch the feeding the kitten scene from before and not get that info from the girl, but by hearing this and then proceeding to not ask anyone else about it, he just comes off as dense. And even if he didn't get this info from her, Ryo clearly saw that big black car in front of his home on the day of the murder. So why wasn't he asking about that to begin with? People would be way more likely to see that than the guys in suits who were in the car. Another person in town mentions Yamagishi-san nearly becoming bonus points for the black car, but along the way...
Excuse me?
Yes?
What's this nameplate say?
It says Tajima.
I'm trying to find the Yamamoto's house, but see, my eyesight is bad, so...
Don't worry. I'll look for it. Wait for me in that park up ahead.
You're so kind.
This is one of many optional events that pop up throughout Shenmue. They tend to have really specific requirements for timing, like how this one only shows up once at this location on a clear day before 4 p.m. And more often than not, their reward is...
nothing at all!
Here you find the Yamamoto house, lead her to it, she says thanks, and Ryo goes about his business. There's another event later on which I triggered multiple times that involves getting a drink from a vending machine for one of the people working in Dobuita. Not only is there no reward, but being nice and getting him a drink costs you money. There's no reward unless you're playing that 1 and 2 re-release, because this is the sort of thing that developers and a certain type of player look at and think, Anyway, Yamagishi-san mentions almost getting hit by the car and that it drove through Dobuita. But when prompted for more info about the car itself...
Did you see the license plate number?
Maybe if there hadn't been any snow. And to make matters worse, I fell over. So I never had the chance.
It's not a bad question to ask, but if Ryo were paying attention on National Incident Day, he would have noticed that there were no plates on that car. That's still not as good a question as what this other guy asked, though.
I see lots of black cars when I'm working, you know. What kind of car? The make, model?
I don't know. All I know is it's black.
Look, Ryo, this is a black car, this is a black car, this is a black car, and yes, even this is a black car. Narrow it down, buddy. On to Dobuita, where there are tons of shops and stands, but only a few Ryo can actually spend money at. This is where Ryo finds a friend of his, Nozomi. You can tell she's significant because her character model looks way better than almost everyone else's. This is when Ryo finally adds some extra detail about that black car.
Did you happen to see a black car that day?
A black car?
Yeah, it wasn't the kind of car usually seen around here.
That leads to Nozomi mentioning that word on the street is the hot dog truck guy got into an argument with whoever was in it. followed by a dramatic and heartfelt exchange.
Why are you asking about that car?
No reason. See you later.
Ryo,
Hmm?
cheer up, will ya?
Yeah, see you.
Tom, the hot dog truck guy, who I'm just gonna call Tom Dog from now on, denies the rumor but eventually says what happened in possibly the thickest white guy pretending to be Jamaican dialect I've ever heard.
They almost hit one of my customers, so I gave them a piece of my mind. But that man, he gave me this glare. I ain't never seen such a cold stare, man.
Alright, I've been dancing around this the entire video so far, and I know it's still early, but we need to talk about the voice acting. Well, voices. Audio quality was an issue all around, as Suzuki and company miscalculated the absurd amount of dialogue Shenmue would have. This led to more data compression and lowering the quality of some of the dialogue. However, there was another type of voice quality which was a problem, the kind that no bitrate or file format or compression scheme could fix. The acting. Shenmue has regularly been lampooned over the years for having acting that varies from passable to you would get booed off the stage at an elementary school recital. And it comes in several varieties. For example, there's you're reading this off the paper for the first time acting.
Weren't there any other witnesses? That's what I am investigating.
Hi, Ryo. What are you doing?
Wow, so it was a switch.
There's I'm just going to yell everything acting.
Well, I heard Nozomi at the flower shop got mud splashed on her by a black car.
Hey, you're kinda cute, babe. Wouldn't you like to party with us?
Excuse me. Forklifts are coming and going around here. No loitering allowed.
Alright.
And of course, there's the just plain terrible acting.
Excuse me, but I'm busy now. If you're trying to pick me up, forget it. Find someone else.
Wait up, Yasuo. Wait for me.
The weather was awful, so I stayed inside all day. Did you ask Sumiya-san?
Oh, no. I just can't now. If you want to talk, ask someone else.
I'm in a rush to get somewhere. I'm busy. Ask me later, eh?
There's one person who tends to get a lot of blame for how this turned out, and that person is you fucking Suzuki. Hardcore Gaming 101 once held an interview with noted translator and localizer Jeremy Blaustein, who also helped translate and/or localize games like Symphony of the Night, Metal Gear Solid, Valkyrie Profile, Silent Hills 2 through 4, and even more recent games like World of Horror and Silent Hill 2. Again, he was one of the owners of iMagic, a company hired for Shenmue to handle voice talent coordination. Wait, what? Yeah, the localization was outsourced to somebody else. Rumors flew around that localization was handled by a company owned by one of Suzuki's family members, but I couldn't verify that. However, there wasn't just one vision for how to translate the game. As Blaustein said, quote, "You have bits of it that were translated well, but there were probably 20 translators touching it would be my guess. And with that many translators working on that many characters with a story that diffuse, you're going to have huge problems with consistency, huge problems with the story, huge problems with characters speaking." Blaustein said the process of casting and recording was extremely rushed, in part because the translations showed up late. He added, quote, "Stuff was going directly from the translators without being checked, faxed to the studio, and having actors just read the stuff. That's how slapdash it all became. There was no time for direction. It was like, get it done." When you're doing it right, like with Metal Gear Solid or something like that, you set up the situation. You're not doing anything by the seat of your pants. But they could still hire good actors, right? Maybe, if not for Suzuki insisting that all voice actors, including the English ones, had to be in Japan so he could be near the dubbing process. It wasn't a money issue, he just wanted it done that way. However, since Shenmue has hundreds of human characters and pretty much all of them say something, they wound up auditioning and hiring damn near everyone who could understand English and were willing to call themselves actors. The state of English acting in Japan at the time, as Blaustein described it, largely revolved around people who were models or teachers or otherwise in some other line of work and then tried acting. That or actors who couldn't find their footing in the West and went to Japan. He stated bluntly, quote, "Nobody that was doing that thought it was a good decision. And clearly it wasn't. But then he did something completely unprecedented. Since you, fucking Suzuki, insisted the actors be in Japan, Jeremy flew back to the US, recruited some voice actors, and flew them to Japan specifically to work on Shenmue. Again, this would have been easier to pull off if not for the machinations of you, fucking Suzuki." And at this point, I'm just going to let Jeremy's words speak for themselves. For some reason, we were also looking for voice actors who would physically look like the characters. There weren't enough actors in Japan, and it was the case that Mr. Suzuki wanted a good-looking young unknown. Not even an actor, a young newbie. I don't know what he was thinking actually, because if you look at the page of actors on Shenmue Dojo, they're all good-looking people. The one thing you can do to make hiring a voice acting cast even more difficult, you can add this condition. They have to be good-looking. And the people I got were Deborah Rabbi and, certainly, Corey Marshall. And he did martial arts. That's one of the reasons why he got the job. So I wrote contracts and sent them back to Japan. Corey had never been to Japan. He'd never done acting. Corey was in college at this time, and he stopped pursuing his fine arts degree so he could fly to Japan and voice Ryo. And for the record, his degree was in dance, not acting. Now let me recap. We've done a worldwide search for this guy. We find a complete amateur, not hugely talented, but good-looking enough to be called good-looking. He did martial arts, so we could say he did them. He satisfied a lot of the check marks. And then they changed his voice electronically at the end of all this to make him sound younger. Isn't that ironic? Isn't that hilarious that after all that work, they change his voice? I figured it would be simpler to just explain that now and get it out of the way, because we're going to see and hear some strange things for the rest of the video, starting in about, actually, a few seconds. Ryo starts looking for Chinese people to ask about, well, Chinese people, and ends up at a local Chinese restaurant. After convincing the restaurant owner that he's definitely not a xenophobe, he learns about some other Chinese people running businesses in Dobuita. He asks one of them about the others, and...
Years ago, I was Chinese.
You see what I mean? And just so you have the full context for the line...
How do you know about the 3 blades?
Years ago, I was Chinese. Now, I'm a naturalized Japanese.
Even in the full context, it still sounds awkward. And I should note that the Shenmue website at the time said this about the characters. Each Shenmue character has been designed with the utmost attention to realism and detail. No compromises were made in their creation. Be sure to note their emotions during your interactions. Well, that's kind of hard to do considering a lot of them can't properly emote. On a positive note, the huge amount of dialogue means that the majority of the townspeople will have unique dialogue according to what Ryo is doing or looking for.
Oh, why, yo, where are you headed?
Over to the Diu Barber and Hair Salon.
I see. Need a bit of a trim, eh?
Well, except for the ones that just tell him to piss off.
Excuse me?
Excuse me. I'm too tired right now. Catch me later.
Got a minute?
Kiss off! Get out of my face!
I should also note that at the point where the 3 blades enter the equation, there are 3 possible paths to proceed, one tied to each blade. But that only lasts 1 or 2 dialogue sequences before they all converge back on the Luz and their barbershop, which conveniently doesn't open at all until this point in the story. Oh, right, shops in Dobuita all have their own open and closed hours, which is a nice touch of realism, except when it isn't. Anyway, Ryo goes to a Chinese barber, one whose wife sounds really bougie for some reason.
Darling, you saw it in the paper on that snowy day.
When Jeremy said they got every English speaker they could find, that also included several different dialects of English. There are even some people in this game who have British accents.
I'm sorry, but can you ask me later?
Okay.
You saw it in the paper on that snowy day.
Wait a sec, is this suggesting Ryo's dad's death was somehow printed in the paper the same day it happened? That's what the day it snowed has referred to this point. The barber says his dad might know something helpful and that he usually walks around the park area nearby. But on the way there...
Hey, wait a minute! That's it, your history!
Yeah!
This is another optional scene, and one of the early examples of another Shenmue hallmark, QuickTime events. In fact, this is where that name came from. Well, they're actually called Quick Timer events here, but close enough. I'll get into these later when they pop up more often, but for now just take in the constipated voice work and the actor's lines getting cut off repeatedly.
You think you can bump into me and not even apologize? Yeah, jerk!
In the park, he asks Lou's dad about Lan Di, at which point he immediately assumes that Lan Di is a triad member and that he's tied to black market deals in the nearby harbor. Ryo asks around about sailors and is told they drink and hang around bars. Ryo gets so good at asking this question that he can do it with his eyes closed.
Who the hell do you think you're talking to? You frontin' with me?
You all heard that, right? There are bars in Dobuita, but they don't open until much later in the day. Shenmue doesn't have any way to accelerate time, meaning that whenever you need to go someplace that's closed or otherwise inaccessible, you have to wait for it to open. And that means killing time. Early. And often. This is where it seems like Yu Suzuki Suzuki started spitballing ideas for what the player could do when they couldn't, play Shenmue. Aside from buying capsule toys over and over, there's the slot house, where Ryo can use his sort of earned money to try and win tokens, which don't do anything. Well, there are prize certificates for winning a certain amount of tokens for certain machines, but much like achievements and trophies, they don't do anything. There are vending machines where Ryo can buy and then angrily drink cans of soda. The soda has no benefit to Ryo, but there is a small random chance of finding a winning can, which can be taken to the convenience store in exchange for a raffle ticket. Speaking of, there are 3 stores or lounges where you can buy basic supplies like snacks and batteries, and which have raffles, most of which are the Tomato Convenience Store, which, the Japanese says Tomato Mart. What was wrong with that name? You can buy stuff and then pick a prize from a box. This is where those Sega Saturn games can be won, but the few times I did buy something from these stores, I usually didn't get a chance to pick a raffle prize. In some areas, Ryo will say, well, might as well start punching the air.
It looks like I can practice here. I should work on my moves. Let's get sweaty.
This is a training mode in the most literal sense. Ryo has a list of moves and different levels of proficiency for each of them. He can add moves by either randomly performing them, being taught them by whoever. There are several people who do this. And when you do this, the VMU shows you what you just did, and the Dreamcast starts beeping like an oven that just finished preheating. Or you could just learn these moves by finding scrolls or buying them from a local shop. If a move hasn't hit the minimum threshold, he can't use it outside of training. You have to perform these moves repeatedly to get the skill bar for each of them from learning to moderate to advanced. The higher the bar gets, the more proficient Ryo gets at the move and the more damage it deals. You could also pick an option in Ryo's room to focus on a particular kind of move and speed up its development. Why is this not available anywhere else? And how come Ryo will look at a parking lot or a tiny park area and decide to train, but not when he's in the dojo? Also, it takes a very, very, very long time to get most of these moves, even to the moderate setting, so mileage may vary on whether that's actually worth it to you. It kinda wasn't for me. For all the thought that went into making this a thing, no one thought to have a convenient way to stay with it or get out of it. Rather than hitting a button and leaving, or just walking out of the training area, you have to either open and close the help menu and then select quit, or wait until Ryo stops on his own and an option pops up to keep going or not. I'm not getting too deep into the fighting mechanics yet because I want to wait until an actual fight happens. And no, QTEs don't count. And then there's the Game Center, aka U Arcade. This is where I wound up spending most of my idle moments and Ryo's money. There's a dart game where Ryo drunkenly wobbles his arm trying to hit the board, and then 2 other games designed to help get used to the quick timer events. The real time sinks, however, are the cabinets for Hang On and Space Harrier. These are legit ports of the arcade games, and each has various token and toy rewards associated with them for doing things like finishing the game in 1 credit, or hitting certain point thresholds. There was supposed to be an Afterburner cabinet too, but that was removed. Even so, this is where I had the most fun in the whole game. And what does it say that my favorite part of playing Shenmue was when I wasn't playing Shenmue? Back to the bars now that they're starting to open, Ryo gets told to check out 2 different nearby bars. One of them didn't open for another few hours, so I left the game running while I played another game on my PC. At the first bar, Ryo finds 2 guys who won't talk to him unless he makes a 1,000 yen bet on a pool shot. The game very abruptly turns into billiards, flashes a screen with the new controls on it, and gives you 1 chance to sink a bank shot. There's an annoyingly tight window in which to make this shot, but even when you do make it, the guys admit they're not sailors and this was a complete waste of time. Imagine spending a bunch of time and Ryo's money trying to get the hang of this shot, only to find out that you were on the wrong path the entire time. The bar the sailors do hang out at is a place I completely missed because it's tucked away in an alley that's so nondescript I kept walking past it over and over. Upon going to the correct bar, a couple more quick timer events start up, one of which sees Ryo getting accosted by terrible voice work.
There you go! Milk's perfect for a schoolboy, I'd say!
And despite causing hundreds, possibly thousands of dollars in damage and apparently killing a couple patrons, we never see them move or hear them talk again. The bartender tells him to look for a sunglass-wearing motorcycle guy named Charlie and then lets him leave.
In return, you don't show your face here again.
Okay.
I stumbled upon another optional scene where Tweedledee and Tweedledum got mad at a kid because he somehow hit one of them in the face with his airplane, and Nozomi was defending him. This time, Ryo doesn't get stuck in a QTE. He goes into free battle mode.
A fight has broken out!
Even when just mashing buttons, this was over really fast, so I'll get more into how this works for a more involved encounter.
They were going to hurt him.
I know, but you can't reason with those guys.
But... okay.
The relationship tension is so thick a gentle breeze could punch a hole through it. After not getting any info about Charlie from a child that sounds like a cartoon Christmas elf...
Have you ever seen a guy wearing a black leather jacket?
Leather jacket? Like yours?
Yeah.
Nope. I haven't.
Realism in detail, everyone. No compromises were made. I guessed who Charlie was based on people I'd seen around town, at least when I wasn't getting lost in Dobuita, and found a guy at the arcade who wasn't Charlie but fit his description. I tried to put 2 and 2 together, but Ryo didn't. So not Charlie threatened to beat him up, and Ryo did nothing. And so Ryo is running around town asking if anyone knows Charlie. I realize it's Japan and that name wouldn't be as common, but he often doesn't give any details about him other than his name. Stop making this harder than it needs to be, Ryo. The notebook said to ask the jacket shop owner, who mentioned Charlie showing off his tattoo a lot, and Ryo doesn't make note of this. The motorcycle shop owner just says to go to the jacket shop, so this seems like an impasse. Except I already found a tattoo parlor while wandering around earlier. One that even during its open hours is always closed. It wasn't until I went to the bar Ryo was told to never set foot in again that he got a hint related to Charlie's tattoo.
Got no time to chat with kids. Beat it. Don't make me tell you again. Get out of here. Get out of here, punk. You just don't get it, do you?
I don't know what to say, except...
That was unnecessary.
After Ryo still didn't take note of the tattoo hint or ask anyone about it, and wasting even more time, I caved and looked up what I was supposed to do. It turns out that even when you know where to go or what to do, the game doesn't let you progress until a certain amount of time has passed. Even then, it gets really anal about how you do some things. There are no trains in Shenmue, but apparently there is railroading. The next step involves walking past the arcade after nightfall to trigger a cutscene. But if you do it too early or approach it from the wrong direction, the scene never starts. This is the kind of problem I expect to find in RPG Maker games made by amateurs, not million-dollar games from known and respected developers. Oh, I forgot to mention this earlier, but Shenmue was the most expensive video game ever made at the time.
Total is $70 million. $70 million. $7 million.
And it still pulls shit like this because dollars doesn't equal design quality. After walking toward the arcade in the correct direction, Ryo gets stopped by one of the guys he beat up earlier who says he knows Charlie and can take Ryo to see him. Ryo for some reason trusts him and gets ambushed by all the other guys he QTE'd into submission earlier. At which point another free battle happens.
A fight is broken out!
Free battle is where you fight against whoever wants some, really. Usually goons whose names you never learn outside of Shencyclopedia Passportanica. Ryo can punch, kick, dodge/parry, and throw with the face buttons. The left trigger lets Ryo run around to avoid getting surrounded or cornered, and the right trigger can have a specific move assigned to it for a one-button input, except when the left trigger is part of a running move input. Many of the early free battles are pretty short, and I usually just mashed my way through them in 20 seconds or so. Fights end when either every opponent is knocked out, or Ryo's circle of strength beads empties, though it takes a lot for the latter to happen. The beads will flash yellow when Ryo gets hit and disappear if he gets hit again, but over time and with successful attacks, they do slowly replenish. The enemy AI is okay most of the time, though that's in large part because of how often they'll parry whatever Ryo does. Otherwise, in large groups, they tend to act like mobs in martial arts films, waiting to step forward one or two at a time and learn what Ryo's fist tastes like. Combined with the amount of moves Ryo has that sweep in an arc and can hit multiple people, these encounters are kinda meh. They would also go a lot faster if Ryo would just keep using the patented Hazuki sidestep and knee to the gut. Actually, could you imagine if Ryo's dad did that in the fight against Landy? Sidestep, knee to the gut, Landy runs away, and dad is still alive and sees shit like this and is shocked at how incredibly gullible his son is. Which, look, I know it is a slog going through a story-driven game beat by beat, but you really need the full picture to understand how Ryo is and isn't good at this whole being a protagonist thing. Ryo takes one of the guys, who I don't know his name, but I'm sure the dev team knows what his name, shoe size, and favorite season of Cheers are, and literally twists his arm until he says where he got his tattoo.
Okinawa!
He mentions there's a tattoo parlor somewhere in Yokosuka, which... what? The parlor is in Dobuita. I've been there multiple times trying to figure out what to do next. And don't tell me Dobuita is part of Yokosuka, so he's technically right. This is like saying someone is in New York City instead of at Times Square. To recap, Ryo still doesn't know where Charlie or the tattoo parlor are. Allegedly. He finds out the latter by going back to not Charlie and pretending he wants to join the gang the tattoo is related to. And yes, Ryo has to do this to advance the story. After arriving at the no longer perpetually closed parlor, the owner spends over a minute begging Ryo to let him ink him up before saying Charlie might be there tomorrow and that he's closed. While there's a lit up open sign behind him. Why is that inside where no one can see it? So Ryo runs back home, falls asleep, gets up the next day, runs back across Yamanose and Sakuragaoka to Dobuita, and waits several in-game hours for the tattoo parlor to open again. In case anyone's wondering, yes, this is one of those games where there was so much downtime, I reviewed the footage at 400% speed. Well, okay, sometimes 800%. When the parlor finally opens, Expendable Goon number 4 is there but leaves, and Ryo goes to surprise Charlie, which initiates a QTE where Charlie tries to shank him. I'm also noticing that Corey's acting for Ryo seems to get a lot better when he gets to be pissed off.
Why do you want to know? That's none of your business, just tell me!
So Charlie arranges for Ryo to meet some of the cartel members, which... Wait, I thought we were still on the gang thing. Now we're back on the Chinese cartel stuff? For some reason, Nozomi was waiting outside the apartments where the parlor was, saying class just got out. I'm now realizing Ryo hasn't been going to class, which is understandable because, you know, his dad died, grieving process, all that. And that I have no idea where a school would be in this neighborhood, but probably not in the commercial district of Dobuita. She chides him for missing college orientation and not having a graduation plan, then leaves. I feel like I'm supposed to be more invested in their relationship than I am, but the mostly soulless conversations between them, which happen pretty far apart from each other, don't really build to anything, either in the moment or long term.
It's about time you started studying for the entrance exams.
Yeah, I know.
I'm worried about you. And with exams...
I feel like Ine-san and Nozomi could switch scripts here and it wouldn't feel different at all. And of course this gang or cartel or whatever meeting happens the next day, which means even more time wasting. Remember the waterfall in Earthbound? The one where you have to just not touch the controller for 3 minutes and then you get led into the hideout behind it? If you know someone who talks about how stupid that is but then praises the design of Shenmue, feel free to just kick them in the dick. Just straight in the dick. If they don't have a dick, get them a dick and then kick it. Actually, speaking of free, Sega decided that Shenmue was so unique they needed to come up with a new genre for what it is, calling it free, or a full reactive eyes entertainment game. A decidedly not pretentious move by a company that was decidedly not in financial trouble. Free is more or less a more open RPG, driven home by the repeated use of the words RPG has changed in the trailers, or that of an open-world sandbox-type adventure game, specifically a 3D one with stuff like dynamic weather, day-night cycles, and NPCs with daily routines. Have I mentioned how glad I am that free didn't catch on as a genre name? And aside from the scale at which it does certain things, most of what Shenmue does had already been done before. For example, pre-Bethesda Fallout had shops that closed and opened at certain times and NPCs that went about their days and moved around vaults and towns, and even some rendered animated faces for some of the more prominent ones in conversation. The Ultima games through the 90s included things like dynamic NPC conversation trees where you could ask them about several subjects, and the ability to interact with practically any object in the environment. The second Elder Scrolls game, Daggerfall, had a weather system, and the first Elder Scrolls Arena, had day-night cycles and, again, NPCs with shops that opened and closed at certain times. Hell, even console games like Harvest Moon and Castlevania 2 did that. As for the whole going around a town talking to people and gathering clues aspect, that's almost every adventure game, particularly detective games. And while many of them were point-and-click titles with a list of locations to teleport to and, in the mid-90s, questionable green screen FMVs, there was also stuff like the Tex Murphy games, where you could move around a 3D environment and interact with certain objects, as well as questionable green screen FMVs. If video games were food, Shenmue would be the sandwich that has the ingredients of a ham and Swiss, BLT, and meatball sub, all while Sega claims it's not a sandwich anymore. The scope at which it does everything is impressive for the time, particularly for the Dreamcast and in a detailed 3D explorable environment, but damn if it doesn't feel like Stage 4 scope creep took hold early in development. Anyway, the next morning, Ryo finally remembers what the dojo is used for and spars with Fukuhara-san for a bit. And this feels like a good time to point out two things I really don't like about free battles. For one thing, some of the inputs for the moves are too much for what they are. I can hit forward and X to do the two pit blow punches, or I can hit forward, forward, back, and then X and A at the same time to do a palm strike. Even if the latter does more damage, the former is much easier to perform in battle and practice, and thus train up to be more effective. Even if I did want to do moves with way too many inputs, there's another problem: the camera. Inputs for moves change based on which direction Ryo is facing, and given the 3D environment and how slow the camera is to rotate most of the time, that means suddenly having to either flip the forward and backward inputs, or, when the camera really isn't cooperating, hitting up and down to do forward and backward inputs. That's also assuming you can see who you're attacking. Sometimes the camera gets out of position horizontally and can make it hard to see who's around or even directly in front of Ryo, leading to the Bart and Lisa approach of swinging at the air while moving forward. After the sparring session, Fukuhara is so shocked to hear Ryo's going after the cartel that his voice quality changes mid-thought.
not thinking of going after them alone, are you? You go up against those killers?
It's my only option.
What if something happens to you? I'd feel responsible.
Don't worry about me.
I'm begging you, please think it over.
My mind is made up. I must go.
I know Corey hadn't acted at all before this, and voice direction was practically non-existent, but holy shit. On the way out of the dojo, Ine-san passes Ryo a letter to his dad, which showed up right after he was killed. It's entirely in Chinese, so he can't read it. And Ryo's only met maybe 4 or 5 other people who understand Chinese and could probably read this for him, so I guess he's shit out of luck. Actually, wait, did Ryo's dad know Chinese? Or would he have also had to find somebody else who could read that for him? While passing through Sakuragaoka, Charlie takes a kid's soccer ball hostage to lure Ryo to a construction site. A fight and 1 QTE later, they run away and the whole Charlie Mad Angels thing doesn't come up again until much later, even though Ryo knows people connected to him and they presumably don't like getting their asses kicked by some high schooler with a porcupine mullet. The boy says thank you in Chinese, says he is Chinese, and Ryo, who needs someone to read an all-Chinese letter and has met multiple Chinese people already, lets him run off and acts like he has no leads on who could read the letter.
Do you know anyone who understands Chinese?
I'm sorry. What?
Eventually, he just comes across the kid in Dobuita again and learns that his grandmother runs the china shop, as in plates and teacups. And Ryo can ask her to translate the letter. Well, actually, Ryo randomly wrote down that he should ask Lu-san after I talked to a couple people in Sakuragaoka who knew nothing. But this is another one of those moments where there are multiple ways to find out how to translate the letter, and they all lead to the same place. Nice to have some flexibility for moments like these, but I guess every other Chinese person in town is either too busy or illiterate. Apparently the little boy somehow ran back to his grandmother, told her what happened, and then ran back to the outskirts of Dobuita in the short time it took Ryo to find him again. And she translates the letter in thanks. The writing is actually reversed, so she uses a mirror to translate it, and it says to seek out someone named Master Chen for help, as well as some seemingly nonsense phrases on the back and what seems to be a phone number. Thankfully, Ryo writes down the phone number and phrases, but he writes them in the middle of the notebook, which ordinarily would be fine, except this number and the phrases have to be called and used several times for the rest of the game, meaning other notes and empty spaces for notes Ryo doesn't write down pile up and bury them. So you have to either go back and find them repeatedly or write them down on a post-it or something for reference. I would say just write it in the notes section of the instruction booklet because a lot of games from around this time still did that, but for some reason, Shenmue's doesn't. The good news is there's a phone in Dobuita, so this doesn't require running back to Sakuragaoka or Ryo's home. And the notebook can be opened while dialing the number, which is nice at first and gradually becomes more annoying as the number gets buried by several pages of notes. It turns out those phrases are a password Ryo has to say over the line, and responding in the right order leads the voice to tell Ryo about warehouse number 8.
I've got no choice but to go and find this warehouse number 8.
But that's got to be impossible!
Does he not know what a phone book is? Oh, right, younger viewers? Phone books were these huge books that were nothing but names and numbers, and you would have white pages, which were just the residential numbers, and then you would have the yellow pages, which were the business phone number. Ryo does look in the phone book at home and uses the area code for the number to narrow the warehouse's location down to a place called Amihama, continuing the pattern of this game rebounding between Ryo doing something kind of smart and being completely oblivious to what's going on around him. Ryo learns Amihama is at a harbor he can only get to by bus, something that had to be explained to him twice in the same conversation. And when he boards the bus at the nearby bus stop... Oh, one sec, I have to go swap discs. Ryo arrives at New Yokosuka Harbor and immediately comes across some of the worst acting and editing in the game. I mean, a QuickTimer event.
And just who are you?
Don't you know that blackmail is way uncool?
Thinks you tough, eh? You're Hazuki from Suka High!
Hazuki! Yeah? So what?
Doro-san! Hey!
For Shenmue's QTEs, there were two things that stuck out to me. One good, one bad. The good? Most input sequences are pretty quick, but some have a margin of error to them. Sometimes you can miss an input and it won't lead to outright failing the entire string. However, the way the game shows directional inputs does not help. At all. They show up as these stocky, see-through outlines, the design of which makes it harder to quickly tell which way the arrow is pointing. More often than not, when I failed a QTE, it was because of one of these arrows. Sure, outright failing a series of QTEs causes the game to load a checkpoint at the beginning of the scene, but that can also mean waiting a really long time to get back to the QTEs, particularly in the latter half of the game. Pompadour-san says where warehouse number 8 is, and after getting turned away by the guards when trying to just walk in, a crate spawns behind the warehouse. But there's no prompt to move it to the bigger stack. I knew what to do, but even after wandering around the crates for a minute or so, nothing happened. Until Ryo randomly looked up at the open warehouse window. I somehow wasn't standing in the right place to trigger the ability to push the crate.
I'm sorry.
What?
After thinking out loud while trying to sneak around an echo chamber,
there must be some information here.
He overhears a couple workers and realizes he's in the wrong place. There's another warehouse number 8 in another district of the harbor. He learns where it is, no thanks to the hot dog hustler Tom, who somehow doesn't know where it is despite being about 30 feet away from it. But Ryo can't get in because, again, guards. After Ryo wrote down where the old warehouse district is several minutes after I already found it, I triggered the next set of events by stupidly trying to walk into the district directly in front of a guard. There is another way to do it, but this seems way more direct. An hour and a half of waiting later, Ryo sneaks past the guard station and a stealth section ensues. This is another one of those times where the gameplay suddenly changes to something entirely different for one specific event, and while hiding can be a bit awkward at times, getting spotted isn't an instant failure, the guards don't see very far and patrol far enough apart to make this feasible on the first or second try, and subsequent failures do lead to hints at how to sneak past, and fewer guards being on patrol, so all things considered, this is, okay. Now inside the warehouse, Ryo is at first confronted by a guy in a suit, but Master Chen stops Ryo and his son Guizong from fighting. Ryo explains everything, and Chen reveals that Lan Di, also known as Long Sun Zhao, is a member of the Chiyo Men Chinese cartel. Wait, Sun?
Do you remember Chao Sun Ming?
Oh, so Ryo's dad killed Lan Di's dad. Well shit, I actually kinda like Lan Di more than Ryo now. He also asks if only one mirror was stolen, because there's another one. The Phoenix Mirror. Ryo guesses that the mirror is somewhere in the Hazuki house, which I don't know why he would think that, aside from that cryptic puzzle that I never completely solved in the dojo. Hey, wait a minute! Ine-san says Fukuhara-san wants to talk, and he reveals that he snitched about everything Ryo is doing, but adds Ine-san might know something about the other mirror.
I just heard the two of you talking. Fuku-san talks very loud, doesn't he?
How dare you? That's not him yelling, that's just him trying really hard to act. She says Ryo's dad had something important stored in an antique shop. The cat! But never mind that shit, the cat's healthy enough to leave the box. Also, Nozomi's kinda pissed Ryo doesn't talk to her much anymore, to which Ryo expresses some sort of emotion. It involves a scowl, whatever it is. At the shop, the owner says he was holding something for Ryo, and it's a sword's crossguard, which apparently gets passed down once a Hazuki hits adulthood. Damn, when I hit adulthood, all I got was a hand-me-down car. This shop also sells scrolls used to learn more attacks, but there's not much reason to do it considering Ryo already started the game with a pretty long move list. On the way home, Guizong shows up, Ryo thinks he's working with Lan Di, and
a fight has broken out!
I'm sorry, I can't ignore this anymore. We have to talk about the music. First of all, there were 5 different composers for Shenmue, and they apparently all worked on their own. One of them reported that for sound meetings, everyone would present their songs and he would think, oh, he made a song for the same scene I did. Still, there was some serious talent here. One of them was none other than Yuzo Koshiro. Streets of Rage, ActRaiser, Beyond Oasis, etc. Koshiro was brought in and composed 3 songs, one of which is on a random cassette tape you might never listen to. But you should.
I gotta give up, the funky rhythm, Let me take you on a trip. Let me take you on a ride.
And another composer, one who made twice as many tracks as Koshiro, was Takenobu Mitsuyoshi. If his name doesn't ring a bell, his voice sure as hell will. Mitsuyoshi was told by Yu fucking Suzuki to take inspiration from Buddhist sutras, because he wanted music that wouldn't be too loud or distracting, also suggesting sounds like babbling brooks and birds singing as a base to work from. This led Mitsuyoshi to try and find the melodies in those sounds. Okay. I know what they're trying to say. And I'm a musician myself. I mean, this is what one corner of my office looks like. But I can't help hearing this and thinking,
everything is musical. Buzzer, buzzer, knock, knock, slam, slam, you.
Mitsuyoshi added that it's music the player wouldn't notice, but the scene would feel empty without it. Well, he's half right. I finished Shenmue and I remember almost none of the music I heard in it, except for about 8 notes of the Tomato Mart song, the Slothouse music, and the Hazuki Residence music, but only because that was practically inescapable. It's not outright bad, there are some good tracks here, but most of it is just forgettable. On the flip side, some of the music can be really distracting or sound out of place, like whatever the hell this fight music is supposed to be. I'd expect to hear this over footage of, say, a sitcom dad performing menial tasks around the house, not a multi-man melee. Meanwhile, back at the fight...
If I continue, then I'll fail as your bodyguard.
I'm sorry. What?
After Guizong realizes a bodyguard is supposed to beat up people other than the person he's assigned to, he says they can't let Landy get the other mirror because... Actually, yeah, why does Landy want the mirrors? We never really established that. And if he knew that the one mirror was with the Hazukis, why wouldn't he suspect them of having the other mirror too? As it turns out, making a huge display in a public setting while loudly talking about something secret isn't a good idea, as this golem-looking Landy lackey hears everything they said. Ine-san can only speculate that this is a clue from Ryo's dad. But because I was in the dojo before this, I immediately knew this was used on that indentation in the wall. Using the guard on it causes the wall to pop loose and swing open, eventually leading to a hidden basement area. Hope you have a flashlight. There are several old mementos from Ryo's dad, including a leaf hidden in a book about the zodiac signs, which does nothing. The candles, however, are important, both to see and so my footage in dark spaces doesn't look as crappy. And in another example of the pendulum in Ryo's brain swinging back to the smart side, he notices in a mirror that there's a ceiling talisman on a shelf, and then notices scratches on the floor next to it. So he pulls the shelf away from that part of the wall and notices a part of it that looks different and sounds hollow. He uses an axe, which conveniently was in the room, to break it open and finds a box containing the Phoenix Mirror, which he decides to take to Master Chen. That's great and all, but if Landy really doesn't know where the second mirror is, and neither does Gollum, should Ryo really be taking it out of its fairly secure hiding space and just carrying it with him wherever he goes? After making the call to Chen, some more waiting happens, because the bus only shows up at the top and bottom of the hour. Thankfully, from this point on, if Ryo calls ahead, the guards just let him in.
Zhu Yuanda once told me, when the dragon and the phoenix meet, the gates of heaven and earth will open, and Qi You will resurrect itself on earth. It's a legendary Chinese monster that will devour this world of ours.
What will he try?
That even I don't know,
If Landy actually does summon some ancient evil, then that will completely change my opinion of this game. In one of the most telegraphed moments in the game, Chen says Landy can't get the mirror, Guizhong says he can't get the mirror, and Gollum immediately shows up to steal it. But Ryo just pushes a button, the lift he's standing on moves slightly, and he clumsily drops it and leaves. The mirror is somehow unscathed from that high fall onto concrete, but now Landy will know Ryo has the second mirror, and Guizhong mentions the Chiyo men are in cahoots with a local gang, the Mad Angels. But Landy is also gone. Maybe. Probably.
He's likely not here anymore. Then where did he go?
Well, maybe he has already gone to Hong Kong.
Hong Kong?
Ryo asks for help getting to Hong Kong, but Chen and Guizhong both say, nah, you'll get your ass handed to you again.
You should not waste your life on revenge.
Yeah, Ryo, don't be like Landy, who successfully got revenge for his father's murder. After Fukuhara-san stares into Ryo's soul for a bit, Ryo has a dream about a screensaver with the bird and the mirrors in it. The next day he gets a bank statement, I'm presuming some inheritance, showing he's now about 36,000 yen richer.
Guess Hong Kong's out.
What? You're much closer to making it to Hong Kong now. Ryo tells Fukuhara-san about his plan and then, like the good guy he is, goes to Ine-san and tries to trick her into helping him get to Hong Kong, saying that he was thinking of going on vacation somewhere.
I know it's sudden, but I'm thinking of going on a trip.
Good. You could use a vacation. Where are you thinking of going?
Hong Kong!
Hong Kong?
Fuku-san.
It seems the man who killed Hazuki-sensei's there.
Idiot.
Remember how I said Corey's acting is better when Ryo's pissed off? This is one exception to that. So instead of tricking Ine-san into funding his revenge vacation, he takes his daily allowance, why would Ine-san keep doing that after hearing his plan? And runs off to... The cat! The cat is missing. All units, we have an APB out for... Oh, wait, it's fully healed and sitting by one of the houses. Nozomi was also looking for the cat apparently, which... this goes nowhere. At the travel agency in Dobuita, a lady whose job performance is almost as bad as her acting eventually tells Ryo how much a ticket to Hong Kong would cost.
I want to go to Hong Kong.
The pamphlets are over there. Find one, decide.
170,000 yen. Any others?
Jeez, what a pain in the...
Ryo smartly decides not to buy anything else until he can afford the ticket, and he chats with Fukuhara-san about the cost of the ticket, to which Fuk Nukem says, take whatever's in my piggy bank. Which is a bit over 39,000 yen, so Ryo's not even halfway there. Archfuk Durdinand then suggests talking to Nozomi because she travels overseas a lot. Damn, Nozomi's going out of the country a lot and still graduated from high school with no trouble? Serious question, is she a foreign exchange student? Nozomi, who apparently travels a lot specifically to Canada, which I guess explains why she wears white and red all the time, says she sometimes goes there by boat, which is cheaper. And again, this is a conversation which is just about Ryo extracting information. Nozomi doesn't even bat an eye at Ryo saying he's looking for a one-way ticket to Hong Kong. Ms. Best Supporting Actress says they do have boat tickets at a much cheaper and nicer price, and Ryo immediately pays for one in cash. The lady says the ticket will be ready in 3 to 4 hours. There is another travel agency Ryo can try, but they don't sell boat tickets, and the plane tickets are too expensive, so this is Ryo's only option. You know, thinking back on all the time in this game where I was just waiting for something to happen, and I wasn't either playing Space Harrier or Hang On in the arcade, or a different game entirely on my PC, I think the only highlights were finding Rystar and the Solo Wing in the toy capsules. A few hours later, Ryo comes back, and some other guy is at the desk and acts like he doesn't know who the woman was or that Ryo bought a boat ticket. And yes, acts is doing some heavy lifting in that sentence. Ryo straight up calls this a scam, goons try to jump him, that goes poorly, and Ryo intimidates the guy into saying the ticket will be ready for him tomorrow. Meanwhile, Nozomi brought Ryo's dad's favorite flowers for the family altar. This clearly gets to Ryo because he writes in the notebook, "Nozomi brought flowers for altar." That was sarcasm. Oh, it's a dream with that girl whose name I still don't know. She does nothing. The guy calls the next day and says to be at the arcade at noon to pick it up, as opposed to, you know, the travel company's office. Ryo doesn't see anything wrong with this, so after wasting 3 in-game hours and showing up an hour early, Ryo walks into the arcade and almost immediately gets jumped by Gollum, who not only has his ticket, but eats it right in front of him? I mean, that's one way to get fiber in your diet, I guess.
A fight has broken out!
Winning or losing this fight doesn't really matter, not just because the game proceeds on the same path either way, but because the important takeaway is that the travel company is working with the Chiyo men. Also, it's getting close to Christmas, and the environment starts changing to reflect that, which is actually a very nice touch.
Excuse me?
Merry Christmas! Ho, ho, ho! Don't miss the special Santa lunch box set at Hoku Hoku Lunches.
Ryo drags the guy out of the travel company building and a chase ensues. One which has a little leeway. I missed a couple inputs and still managed to track the guy down and witness Ryo in one of his more likable moments.
Give me my ticket.
I don't have it anymore!
Cut the crap!
I'm sorry!
Oh. Alright, that's a weird time for a disc swap. I remember playing other multi-disc PS1 games like Fear Effect, Final Fantasy IX, some of the Resident Evils, and usually when those games did disc swaps, there would be some major story developments or a cliffhanger moment at the end of the disc. Shenmue's disc swap moments are Ryo catches a whiny guy and Ryo uses public transport. The guy tries giving Ryo a ticket to the Philippines and saying he's broke, but Ryo is having none of it, and he ragdolls him a bit until he mentions the Mad Angels, that they're based out of the harbor, and that they like to harass new employees. He actually took the time to write, "Jimmy swindled me" in the notebook. One bus ride to the harbor later, Ryo visits the shipping office and gets told point blank that nobody is hiring.
Sorry, but we aren't looking for help now.
I tried calling Master Chen to see if he might help Ryo get a job, which Ryo didn't even think to ask about. I should have known this wouldn't work because when I gave the right password over the phone the first time, he hung up on me anyway.
Hello?
Mother's Earth.
9 dragons. Oops.
After being told twice where the shipping company boss would be and when, which Ryo doesn't take note of, I had no clue what to do and just went home after several wasted real-life minutes and in-game hours. Oh, and Ryo dreams about the intro lady having a staring contest with the moon. After waking up, running back through Yamanose, Sakuragaoka, and Dobuita, waiting for the bus, boarding the bus, and running back to the harbor warehouses, I went to warehouse number 12 close to noon to catch the supervisor and oh god, why is this guy here?
Yo, dude!
Oh, you.
Seem a bit blue, my man? Got a problem? Then I'm your man!
Yeah, right.
So wanna be a sailor, hey? That's cool, man! Personally, it ain't for me. I get seasick. I just happen to know a number of foremen in charge of cargo.
Can you ask?
Well... Okay!
Wow. I hated everything about that. The mocap, the music, the voice acting. Well, I'm not going to blame the actor entirely because the decision to have him be like this is a bizarre one to begin with. But yeah, I hope this character gets crushed by a forklift. Guy whose name I can't and don't want to remember says to meet him tomorrow in front of warehouse number 1 at noon, which means, you guessed it, having to waste almost an entire in-game day's worth of time. Ryo can't fall asleep until 8 or 9 p.m., so buy some capsule toys, wait for the bus, hang out with Japanese Patrick Star.
Sorry, but I'm working now. Can't chat with you, kid. Don't need my supervisor bitching at me.
I thought this was a setup for Ryo to get jumped again, considering Dollar Store Kuwabara over here tried fighting Ryo when he first showed up at the harbor.
The cat!
But never mind that shit, the cat's so strong now it can climb up and jump down the shrine. And with that, the arc of my favorite character in the game is finished. Anyway, after more waiting at the harbor, Pomp and his friend Circumstance show up and say they got Ryo a job.
What'd you say? That'd be the job I found.
Shut your lip, woman!
Wow, he can't even womanize convincingly. Ryo gets asked if he can start immediately, which, of course, he says yes. So he still has to sign a bunch of papers, negotiate the terms of his employment, get a background check, get a drug test, go through some training seminars, possibly be shadowed by someone while he's still very early in his employment. And depending on what he's doing, he'll have to get some certain certifications, so he has to train for those and then take those tests. Or they could have the teenager drive a forklift 5 minutes into his first day.
Break something, it'll be deducted.
That never happened to me, and I don't even know if that can happen. He gets taught the basic controls by a guy named Mark, whose acting is on par with when NBA 2K had those NBA players voice themselves.
Okay, now it's your turn. Place the crate within the grid marking the floor of the warehouse. Okay, for the rest of the day, you'll be training, alright?
Yo, what's going on tonight? I'm running free all over the court and you didn't give me the ball.
Here's the route map. The quota's written on the map. Read it carefully. If you exceed quota, you'll get a raise.
Oh my, someone called the National Weather Service. We had an unanticipated storm in the building tonight.
They seem to think I'm working with one of their enemies. Somebody call 10.
Sounds like a wise fella to win in this league. You need all hands on deck. Good call.
The forklift control's okay considering, well, it's a forklift. But the trigger for running on foot being the one for going in reverse on the forklift did throw me off at first. Welcome to Cheap Manual Labor Simulator 1986. From now on, Ryo spends his daytime hours working the forklift at the harbor, taking crates from one organized pile and moving them to another organized pile inside a warehouse, the locations of which change on most days. Mark will start the day by giving Ryo a crudely drawn map and say where to go, and then Ryo has a quota of boxes to meet, earning a certain amount of money for each one he moves. If he meets or exceeds the quota, he gets a 50 yen raise. By that I mean, he instantly gets a raise after that day of work. The crate quota is set so low that even with a mandatory 2-hour lunch break, I never came close to missing the daily quota. I started at 300 yen per crate, and by the last time I did this, Ryo was making nearly double that, 550 yen per crate, or more than 7,500 yen per day. And yes, he stopped getting the daily allowance at this point. Wow, no wonder it was so tough to get this job. I mean, who would leave a position where you can hit a really easy-to-meet quota and get a raise every day? After work, Ryo won't leave until he finds out something about the Mad Angels. He does hear some info from Tom and another harbor worker, but doesn't write down anything they say. Maybe because multiple people will say the exact same thing.
The Mad Angels? Those harbor thugs,
them?
right?
Do you know anything about them?
Sure, that they're real annoying jerks. I sometimes see them dumping these large sacks into the sea. It scares away the fish, you know?
As it turns out, Ryo is a liar, because you're either supposed to wander aimlessly until curfew hits, or walk in a specific direction past the lunch stand to trigger a QTE where Ryo wins a game of chicken against the Mad Angels to save a hobo. Add riding a motorcycle to the list of things Ryo just knows how to do. Also, why would the gang let Ryo ride one of the motorcycles? And why did they just leave when Ryo won? Are the Mad Angels just an extremely honor-bound gang? Anyway, Ryo has to ride the bus and run home from work, but fortunately while he has this job, you don't have to run and take the bus on the way there. Ryo was told by Mark to show up early for work because, for whatever reason, the harbor workers have a morning warm-up where they hold forklift races. I remember being told a couple of times how cool the forklift parts of this game were, and well, the working part wasn't, so I assumed that that was in reference to the forklift races, which I'd heard about. After all, Ryo did show up as a character in Sega All-Stars Racing and could drive the forklift, if you pre-ordered it or paid for the DLC. Then I got to try it myself, and it's, okay-ish? The forklift doesn't control particularly well here either, but again, it's a forklift, I wouldn't expect it to. There's this weird buildup of momentum when trying to steer. The turn gets a lot sharper the longer you hold left or right, so it feels pretty alien after playing, well, almost any other racing game. This is made worse by something else: depth perception. As it's a forklift, the lift is jutting out in front a few feet, and this is practically guaranteed to get caught on a wall or a pillar or some other part of the environment at some point. That said, the race itself is pretty easy. My first time through, I straight up crashed multiple times and still finished second. Beyond that, I always finished first because all the other forklifts move slower than Ryo's and the race course is always the same. This gets monotonous fast and there's no way to skip it. Yes, you have to do all the laps and finish every time, or wait 6 minutes real time for work to start. And the reward for finishing this race? A capsule toy. That's it. Look, even if Shenmue Passport were still online, I wouldn't give a shit about these things. There are 5 to win, and you only get each of them by finishing in every possible position in the race. So if you want them all, you need to deliberately suck at this to various degrees. There is one positive to the forklift section, specifically the working sections. And I haven't seen anyone mention this before, but the forklift is a god of life and death, able to cause life to spring into being directly in front of Ryo, or disintegrate it into atoms. Mark gets accosted by a couple mad angels and unconvincingly gets hurt.
Oh, really? I don't know. Oh.
And Ryo free battles them into submission. Mark says they think he's working with some guy named Chen, who's a rival of theirs. And Ryo takes note of this, even though he already knew Chen was opposing the Chiyo Men and, by extension, the Mad Angels. That same day, they jump Ryo in the warehouse where he's dropping off crates. And it goes about as well as the first time with Mark. Afterward, Ryo goes right back to moving crates and doesn't report anything to security or his supervisor. I know there's the whole "the gang runs the harbor" thing going on, but so far I've just heard people say that and then I haven't actually seen them do anything. And Ryo is mollywopping these guys 3 at a time with relative ease, so surely somebody else could do something about them. That night, Ryo dreams about the mirrors and tree dandruff. After a mundane day of work, he hears that the Mad Angels gang has a lot of foreigners in its ranks, and this time decides that's important enough to write down. He also hears, again, that they're in league with a Chinese cartel, something he already heard several times from multiple people, and which he already took note of at least once. And he still writes it down again. And then, nothing happened. For 2 days in a row, nothing happened. Feeling like something wasn't right, I caved again and checked a walkthrough to see what, if anything, I was doing wrong. In short, I got RPG Makered again. This is one of the times you're absolutely supposed to follow the map Mark gives you for the forklift route, which says to do a big-ass loop of the harbor instead of just taking the same path to the warehouse and back. A scene is supposed to trigger in the alley near the lunch stand when approaching from a certain direction, but this only happens between 3:30 and 5 o'clock, and Ryo needs to have a crate loaded on the forklift at the time. The last time I dealt with this many terms and conditions, I bought a house. Expendable Goon number 38 hitches a ride on the crate to yet another free battle, this time against 2 groups totaling 9 people. And yes, one of them is the same guy who got his ass kicked multiple times earlier. This was also around when I just started spamming throws, to shockingly great effect. Ryo gets one of the guys to say where the Mad Angels hang out. Warehouse 17. I actually found this spot already just wandering around the harbor, so I knew exactly where to go. And Mark is getting the piñata treatment again.
A fight has broken out!
After beating up some of the same thugs again, Mark reveals that he's looking for his brother, who he suspects was killed by the Mad Angels. But unfortunately, one of the thugs damaged the part of his brain that expresses emotion.
Oh yeah, Dio. I heard the information was about a black market deal with some Chinese cartel.
We know they're working together! You said this like 6 times! Get on with it!
Yes, get on with it!
Kunio Goon over here tells Ryo that the Mad Angels ride motorcycles and they come out at night. Not only has Ryo heard both of these things before, He rode one of their bikes in a chicken race against them earlier. He still acts like this is new intel and writes it down. The next day during his lunch break, Nozomi shows up with, who is this again?
I'm going to Canada.
Oh. Well, we already knew she goes to Canada a lot, and Ryo's trying to leave for Hong Kong anyway, and their relationship was never effectively built up over the course of the game, particularly from Ryo's side. So if this is supposed to be sad or romantic, it's not working. Though that could also be due to a combination of the localization and the acting. Well, the localization and the voices. Having immediately shrugged off whatever Nozomi said, Ryo heard from a hobo that the Mad Angels gather near the cafeteria. And sure enough, here they are. What follows is a series of QTEs where Ryo kicks a couple of guys off their bikes and ends up chasing Charlie. Remember Charlie? Well, he leads Ryo to...
A fight has broken out!
Ryo dispatches the goons, then takes down Charlie, and Charlie leaks that he arranged transport from the harbor for some Chinese guy in a green dragon robe. Yep, Landy is still in town. Ryo has a Landy dream so short there's barely enough footage of it for this line of narration. Nothing of import happens at work at first, though it is funny seeing a guard say not to look into the Mad Angels, as the door to their hideout with a massive Mad Angels logo painted on it is about 80 or 90 feet behind him. After another instance of having to drive through a specific place at a specific time, look, why can't these just happen automatically at a certain time instead of having to drive through a specific place too? Ryo finds guy whose name I keep forgetting lying in a heap, and the same fucking guy who keeps getting ripped a new asshole every time he messes with Ryo taunts him and tries to run away. I'm hitting the point where I'm starting to think this particular sailor guy just has a fetish for getting beat up. He leads Ryo to a warehouse full of goons and, guys, how many times are we going to try the same thing and fail miserably? Ryo QTEs them into submission, and when the same punching bag threatens to go after his family and friends, he gets knocked the fuck out. Look, moments like these are easily when Ryo is both at his most badass and sympathetic. But outside of this, he's largely cold, disinterested, and single-minded. Also, we've heard that the Mad Angels are a dangerous gang that's allegedly murdered people who know too much or get in their way, but thus far they've just come off as a slightly aggressive bunch of bumbling dumbasses. The gangs from West Side Story, mid-song and dance seem like way more of a threat. Mark says he heard something about Long Jia, a deal of some sort, but he has no idea when it'll happen. I tried calling Gui Zhang, who said he could talk to me, and when I showed up at the warehouse, he told me to leave.
I want to ask you something.
I don't have time to listen to your nonsense. Get out of here.
The next day, Your Voice Is My Rage button says he's getting married to Mai. Mai is the girl next to him. Presumably because she can tolerate his presence for more than 20 seconds without hoping he gets hit by a car. And no, this doesn't go anywhere. Ryo heard that sailors hang out by the cafeteria building, and Mark says two guys named Tony and Smith were talking about the deal happening in the next few days.
Maybe the only option is to ask them directly.
Well, maybe, but Dio.
Believe me, I know, but I'm prepared to take the risk.
Dio.
Whoa, calm down, Mark. Jeez, do not get swept up in your emotions. If you have any. I didn't know who Tony and Smith were, so I just kept working as usual. This is another instance where Ryo has to drive through a certain area at a certain time, but he also needs to have a crate loaded and approach the area from a certain direction. Dear you fucking Suzuki.
Stop it!
Ryo approaches the two Goombas and they take off, leading to a series of QTEs where the other crooked workers Ryo has beat up multiple times try to slow him down. Either Tony or Smith gets caught and manhandled again, revealing that the leader of the Mad Angels is a guy named Terry, and he doesn't know where to find him. What kind of name for your big bad boss is Terry? Later, Ryo gets a note from Gui Zhang saying the Mad Angels are after him. As if that hasn't been the case for the past in-game week or so.
The Long Jia. Maybe Master Chen knows about it.
Motherfucker, I already tried that! Well, this time Chen is there, and Gui Zhang isn't being an asshole, and he says Landy isn't involved with the deal. and that the deal involves contraband, likely drugs, but he convinces Ryo not to get involved, at least for now. That changes quickly as in the middle of the night, Ryo wakes up for no apparent reason, and then Ine-san says Nozomi's missing. Gollum calls Ryo's house, lets Nozomi ask for help, then says Ryo needs to get behind warehouse number 17 at the harbor before 4 a.m. or he'll, quote, make her cry, unquote.
Don't you dare touch her!
I think this is the first time I've seen Ryo show he actually cares about Nozomi. And the game's almost over.
I didn't mention this before, but there's an in-game calendar in this game that runs all the way to April 15th of the following year, at which point you get an automatic game over / bad ending. Which begs the question, how long did they expect me to waste time playing Space Harrier and Hang On in the arcade?
Thankfully, the pace of the game kicks up significantly at this point. Ryo needs a ride out there, but the buses aren't running at this hour. After remembering there was a motorcycle repair shop in Dobuita, Ryo tracks down the owner, who apparently just sleeps in the storefront fully clothed, and he says none of his motorcycles are in working order, but he just fixed Naoyuki-san's and Ryo should ask him. Who the fuck is Naoyuki? Thankfully, Ryo writes down the neighborhood Naoyuki lives in, again, the pendulum swinging back to smart this time, and the town map shows exactly where he lives. Naoyuki, without asking any questions, instantly gives Ryo the keys to the motorcycle and... Wait, I talked to Naoyuki at 1:30 a.m. and now it's 3 a.m.? Yeah, it doesn't matter if you get the motorcycle as early as possible, someone wanted the scene to be more dramatic. Welcome to the final drastic change in gameplay, and much like the others, it's kind of underwhelming. Ryo has to make it to the harbor before the timer runs out, which happens at around 3:35 a.m. And even though the motorcycle gets a bit slippery when turning at high speeds, this sequence is... The road is incredibly wide and has no other vehicles or obstacles on it. It also consists mostly of either gentle bends to the left or right or long straightaways. It's even more underwhelming when you realize one of the people who designed this also worked on Hang On. And the song for this sounds more like generic racing game filler and not dramatic friend-zoned classmate rescue music. The camera angle really doesn't help, as Ryo sometimes blocks the view of what's coming. But even having no knowledge that this sequence was coming or ever seeing the roads before this, I still got through it on the first try. The cinematic wishes that this were Akira for a moment before Ryo pulls up to the warehouse and immediately gets jumped by Mad Angel's thugs.
A fight is broken out!
Who all get spin kicked into submission. This is followed by Ryo getting jumped again by thugs.
A fight is broken out!
Lather, rinse, repeat. Ryo finds Terry and Nozomi, but Terry won't let them go unless Ryo hurts Guizhong to the point that he can't walk. Ryo, who has no leverage at all, adds the condition that Terry take him to Landi afterward, which for some reason Terry agrees to. Go fuck yourself, Shenmue. Not only did you not earn this moment, the moment itself doesn't earn the moment. Ryo says nothing and doesn't even glance at Nozomi, who is sitting in a really unsafe position on that motorcycle, by the way. And Nozomi doesn't say anything, but at least leans against Ryo a little. And given the situation, the song lyrics don't make sense either. They're both leaving. This is generic pseudo-love ballad garbage for an alleged couple we've never seen so much as hold hands, let alone express any interest in each other beyond base-level friendship. And Ryo often doesn't even express that much. Sorry guys, it's been a while since a game pissed me off to the point I just started ranting about something in its plot, but unless there were like a dozen optional scenes that I missed between these two, this is borderline insulting.
They don't even show the end of the motorcycle ride. It just fades to black and then Ryo is standing in his bedroom. That would have been the perfect opportunity to establish something more than the virtually nothing going on between these two.
Well, Ryo has to go to warehouse number 9 tomorrow at 10 p.m., but before that, some good news. Ryo lost his job.
I'm gonna have to ask you to resign.
Am I fired?
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
I thought Ryo was going to save that money and get another ticket to Hong Kong from a legit travel agency, but nope. I saved all that money for nothing. And you know how much I love the feeling that my time has been wasted. Supposedly, Hot Dog Tom is really depressed. Maybe it has something to do with the snow killing the frame rate even more than too many people or buildings being on screen.
Tomorrow, I go back to America.
What? All of a sudden?
Not suddenly. I've been planning to for a while.
Oh my god. Tom is American? For real though, why does it seem like half the population of Yokosuka is fleeing the country all of a sudden? This is coming off like that Drew Carey episode where everyone just randomly starts confessing that they're gay.
I'm gay.
I'm gay too.
We're gay too.
I'm gay too.
Wow, Ryo just showed more affection for Tom than he did for Nozomi.
My friend. Tom.
Wait, I was just joking, but he actually is showing more affection for Tom than Nozomi. Time fast forwards to nightfall. Gee, they could have just done this the entire time. And a Mad Angel goon leads him to where Guijong walks home from work, which from this angle looks like he's not coming from the old warehouse district.
A fight has broken out!
Mid-fight, Ryo relays what's going on to Guijong and tells him to throw the fight. And eventually, they end up taking out each other. Terry pounces, but Ryo pulls Guijong away. And this starts a long sequence where Ryo and Guijong free battle their way past a small army of lackeys. How many lackeys? 70. This whole sequence took me about 9 minutes, though that's in part because I didn't realize until a mini cutscene happened that Ryo and Guijong could leave the space they started in. Every free battle to this point had walls, visible or invisible, around the area. So until I realized that wasn't a thing, I was just waiting in the starting area. Goons would trickle in 1 or 2 at a time, eat a spin kick or 2, get knocked out, repeat. Even in the more open space, a lot of them would just run face first into Ryo's foot. The only one that gave me any trouble was this really tall guy who did pro wrestling moves. You can tell it's pro wrestling based because he gets Ryo in a hold and then just lets go of it for no reason. Guijong confronts Terry, Ryo steals his pipe, and Guijong knocks Terry out. He effectively fought the boss on Ryo's behalf. Terry reveals that Gollum helped Lan Di leave by boat and... Wait, the game's almost over. How is this going to go down? Guijong says he'll talk to Chen about helping Ryo go after him. Ryo goes home, sleeps for maybe 3 hours, and his Christmas present as he's leaving for Hong Kong is a note from Ine-san and Meeten Fook Kingdom. Master Chen arranged for Ryo to board a ship headed for Hong Kong. Specifically, the big one in the harbor Ryo's already walked past several times. Weird bit of trivia, the ship he's boarding is called the Genpu Maru, which is an homage to Genpuki, which was almost the name of this game. Frankly, I think going with Shenmue was the right call. Guijong says he's going with Ryo, and after Chen teaches Ryo a move I won't have time to properly get used to, Gollum somehow kicks a steel support beam down at Ryo, but Guijong forces Ryo out of the way, and a quote-unquote boss fight ensues.
A fight has broken out!
I made a conscious effort to try using the move I just learned, particularly since it's a parry/counter, and got my ass kicked. When I tried just spamming spin kicks and basic punches like I did for almost the entirety of the game, Gollum got destroyed.
Where's Lan Di?
Yolandi-sama is sailing the sea on a ship bound for Hong Kong.
So, Lan Di's already left for Hong Kong.
You already knew that!
I get this is supposed to be a menacing looking shot of Lan Di, but when he's doing it on what looks like my grandpa's fishing boat, it just looks ridiculous. I imagine him watching a baseball game or waiting in line at Burger King in the same pose. But wait, there's still a few QTEs to perform before Gollum finally joins the Fellowship of the Drink. Get it? Because he fell in the water, and drink is a slang term for, bodies of water.
That was so terrible, I think you gave me cancer!
Guijong hurt himself from kicking the steel beam, I guess? Chen tells Ryo about some elder master Ryo can visit in Hong Kong. Ryo boards the ship, and Ryo remembers Nozomi giving him an amulet for protection like this is the Elder Scrolls or something. Again, Nozomi seems to care about Ryo beyond just being friends, and Ryo is a brick wall that talks sometimes. Ryo stands on the ship as it pulls out of port and overdramatic music plays, and the game ends. Well, it doesn't end so much as it just stops. That's it. Now take your bonus 70-man melee time attack mode and be happy. So not only does the game end with beating up a named grunt of Landy and then getting on a boat to follow him, instead of ending with the battle, it ends with a QuickTime event. What a wet fart of an ending. I've seen enough videos and interviews and retrospectives and puff pieces over the years all pointing back to Shenmue and saying what a landmark it is as an achievement of what video games can be. I know how much other people like this game and series, and I was hoping I would like it too. Partially because I knew what the comment section for this video would turn into if I didn't, but mostly because it's just more fun to gush about something you like than dissect and lambaste something you don't. Unless it's something completely irredeemably terrible. That being said, fuck this, I'm not holding back. I will never argue against someone saying that Shenmue looks great and is ambitious. But beyond that, it's a game where I had to convince myself to keep turning on the Dreamcast without swapping the Shenmue disc with something else. All that ambition led to a lot of trying to do a bunch of different things and much of it being half-assed or ill-conceived, with plot points and new game mechanics awkwardly showing up and quickly leaving like a student on the first day of school who walked into the wrong classroom. It also led to a game where there's a shit ton of voices but not a lot of acting, several composers but little music worth remembering, a seemingly somewhat complex fighting system but little reason to actually learn it, and largely well-crafted environments with a few diversions in them, but so much downtime that those diversions and those environments get old really, really fast. Personally, Shenmue simply does way too many things I despise to ever recommend it. I hate when the one entry for a game at the time is clearly setting up for a series. I hate when a story-driven game doesn't have anything that could be considered an ending. I hate when story-driven games leave several plot points unaddressed or unresolved. I hate feeling like the game I'm playing is deliberately wasting my time, specifically with busy work or dead ends. I really hate when I have to wait extremely long times for a game to progress. I have several hours of Shenmue footage, which is just Ryo swinging at the air in a parking lot or standing still because I left the game running, put the controller down, and did something else. I hate when games put in awkward changes in gameplay that appear suddenly and then never show up again, and I absolutely loathe games which say, well, player, better make your own fun for a while. No, asshole, you're the video game. You are the fun, allegedly. And from a plot standpoint, what was resolved here? Huh, Ryo? What did you accomplish? Your dad was murdered, the killer escaped, your girlfriend's eating poutine, your hot dog friend is in Hamburger Land, Mark has Schrodinger's cat in brother form, you severely pissed off a gang that knows where you live and can go after your remaining loved ones, and you can't stop them because you're on a boat to Hong Kong playing Where in the World is Carmen Landiego.
Way to go! Excellent work! Excellent work!
Also, Ryo still has the Phoenix mirror on him. After Chen said over and over and over that Landy cannot be allowed to have both mirrors, even though I still don't know why the mirrors are important or what Landy's trying to do, Ryo's taking it across the ocean to him. And take that bandage off. If whatever it is hasn't healed by now, it probably never will. So, Ryo's dumbassery aside, I wouldn't be as bothered by the lack of resolution for, well, almost everything. If they named this game something like, for example, Shenmue Chapter 1 Yokosuka. So you knew going in there was probably going to be an unsatisfying ending and a plot that doesn't actually resolve much. Why that name specifically? Because that's what the instruction booklet says this game is. Put that on the cover, you cowards. I will never play this again, I don't want to see any cutscenes from it again, and despite the quality of life changes that happen in later entries, not the least of which being the ability to jump forward in time, I never want to play those either. Not even as a Patreon goal. Okay, actually, you know what? I take it back. The $1,000 goal is having to crossplay as Sheena for a live stream and a photo shoot at an anime convention. So, using that as a frame of reference, let's make the Shenmue 2 and 3 goal $2,000. And as it turned out, Yu fucking Suzuki was ahead of the curve in another way, releasing a game that is critically well received and sells pretty well, but is still considered a disappointment. Part of the reason Shenmue's development was so expensive was the groundwork it laid for other Shenmue games, namely Shenmue 2. However, the first game was such a money pit that given the install base of the Dreamcast, even selling over 1 million units couldn't stop it from being a commercial failure, and it wound up playing a role in the downfall of the Dreamcast and Sega's exit from the console market. Shenmue 2 saw a somewhat similar fate, critical praise and a cult following, but notably worse sales and commercial failure. And there was also Shenmue Online, an MMORPG which was teased in the mid-2000s and then quietly got cancelled. Then there was Shenmue City, a Japan mobile phone exclusive social game made in response to how popular Mafia Wars got. Suzuki said that if the game got enough traction, he would continue the story after where Shenmue 2 stopped, saying, quote, "If service continues, I believe we'll be able to share the rest of the story at some point in some form." And Shenmue City was shut down after 1 year. Again, ahead of its time, in the wrong way. Development hell set in until Sony's E3 conference in 2015, when Yu fucking Suzuki walked on stage and said his story wasn't finished before launching a Kickstarter campaign for Shenmue 3. Combined with slacker backers and funding from Sony and Deep Silver, about $20 million was raised for development. Now imagine being one of those backers and supporting the project because, for whatever reason, you wanted to see the rest of the story and they specifically said the story was unfinished. Then you get the game, play through it, and the story is still unfinished because Yu fucking Suzuki said that this series was going to be 4 or 5 games. It's like the Final Fantasy VII remake. This might never end.
I didn't expect the story to become so vast and long, because I was thinking in terms of a movie, since I wanted to create a very cinematic game. In the end, the saga will span 3 installments.
Fucking hell. What if I did that? What if I just, in the middle of a review, just got up, left the shot entirely, got my car keys from the office, which, shit, where did I put them? Where are my car keys? There they are. All right, we got the car keys, and I just went out to my car, go down the stairs into the garage. There we are. Unlock the door, open the garage, get in the car. All right, guys, rest of the review will happen later. See ya.
I'm broke! I can't afford to drink!